Have a wonderful day. Throw it! Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. So one question I get quite a bit is, so you got a handsaw and you made a line on a board and you're trying to cut it, but every time the cut starts to go off to one side or the other. So how do you actually go about steering a saw? Now I'm not going to go into a whole lot about body mechanics in this particular video. I'm going to cover that at a different time because that may be different if you're upright in a vise like this or if you're down on a saw bench, and there's a lot of other things that go into it. But basically, to keep it all in a general term, you want your elbow, your forearm, your hand all to be perfectly in line with the saw so that when you're moving, they're all moving in the same movement. You don't want an elbow out one side or the other, otherwise your saw is going to be veering one side or the other. And all about your stance is how do you actually get into maintaining that arm in line with the saw through the entire stroke of the cut. But once you get that kind of under your belt, there's still a few other things you can do if you're getting off course a little bit or needing to move back into your cut. So I want to kind of show you a few tips I've come up with. So to start the cut off, I'm actually going to pinch the top of this, and I'm going to use my thumbnail as the guide, and my thumbnail will push the saw plate one way or the other. So to keep it in line, my thumb will be over here with its nail, and I'm going to stay on this side of the line just so you guys can see it a little bit more, and I'm going to try and make the saw plate right along this side so you can still see the line when it's done. And if I pinch the blade more, it's going to push it over, and if I pinch it less, it comes back over this way. So you can see how I can finally adjust where I'm going to be cutting. And now I'm down about 1/16 of an inch, and I'm cutting a little bit heavy on this side and not as much on the other side. I'm just kind of seeing where I'm going. At this point, I can easily adjust the cut. If I push it over this way, I can push the cut that way, and the teeth will actually cut into it pushing that way, or the opposite direction as needed. So if I notice that I'm off by 1/16 of an inch, I can easily move it over right now. The farther you go in, the harder it is to cut. So I'm going to continue down a little bit farther here. And at this point, I'm moving my hand away. I'm about a 1/2 inch down, and I'm seeing that I am parallel to the line. Now, right now, it looks like I am leaning a little bit that way. So at this point, I still have a little bit of use. I can kind of pick up the heel and then use the side of the teeth to scratch this side, so that'll push it over a little bit farther. So I'm going to scratch this side a little bit as I come down. And there I'm a little more straight. And I can continue the cut. Now I'm down about 1 inch, 1.25 inches, and from what I can see, I'm perfectly parallel with the line. From this point on, as long as I keep my arm straight and the saw is set up correctly, it will go straight down that line without any problem. So if I'm cutting a long line, I might need a little bit of work. But for right now, as long as it's set up correctly, it's going to cut fairly straight. So now I want to show you a couple options for what happens when you start to go astray. I've pushed the saw off so that it's starting to actually cut over this way. So you can see it's almost an entire saw blade's width away from the line. Now at this point I've caught it as it's only gone about 3/4 of an inch. Now as your eye will learn, you'll catch it earlier and earlier. So one easy quick way to do it once I've caught it this far is I can use the side of the teeth to kind of scratch down and bring it back into parallel. And you can see I'm just making quick short strokes. And now I'm back into parallel with the cut, so I can continue on. So now let's say I've let it go about 2-3 inches and I'm getting off of the line here. When I was first starting, I used to do this all the time. And most of the time this is because of bad body mechanics that I've gotten over here. There's a couple ways you can fix it. Either number one, you can start using the side of the teeth like you did before and bring it back over. Or number two, you can start to fight it. In which case your line is just going to start to get wavy. So keeping it down here to fight it, what I'm actually going to try and do is bring the plate over a little bit and give the saw a little bit of a twist. And so as I'm cutting, I'm trying to force the side of the teeth onto this side of the cut and away from the other side of the cut. I'm also going to start bringing my heel down, so I'm only cutting my side of the board. So basically I'm making a kerf on my side of the board, allowing the other side to follow. And I'm going to keep lowering it down here until I establish it better, because the other side is not going to follow that. And one of the problems with trying to correct a cut after you've made a bow in it is, number one, it's going to be pinching the blade, and number two, the other side may or may not follow this. So you're always having to bend over and look at your line on the other side. So that's why I try and stop it early. So if you're only about a ½ inch into it, you can adjust your line right then and there. If you let it go for a while, you're never going to be able to fix that, and you're always going to be fighting it. And from this point on, then your saw is going to start to S-curve through this whole cut, and it will veer off to one side or the other. So one of the big keys is catch it early and correct it when you see it first time. So when you first start, your cuts are going to naturally be kind of curvy because your arm is moving all over the place and your body mechanic hasn't quite gotten into having a locked stance of your arm always being in line with your saw. And that's something that you basically can only get over time and the more you do it. So experience is really the big key on this, but there are a few things that you can do to help it out. Number one is keep an eye on it. Always be checking that your cut is parallel to the line, especially if you're making a long rip cut. The moment you start to see it go offline, correct it right then and there, and it'll be a lot easier. So if I'm cutting along and I see that it's starting to veer off to one side or the other, here I'm going to force it towards the line. I can actually bring this hand, I'm exaggerating it, bending it over this far, but in doing so I'm actually using the teeth on the far side that are then going to be cutting into the side I want to turn into. So bending it over, you can see how I'm now on the other side of the line. So I can easily kind of guide it by pushing the hand one way or the other, or even giving the saw plate a little bit of a twist one way or the other to guide it. And it's something you just kind of learn over time. The other thing is just back up and straighten out your cut. Use a light hand. A lot of people are cutting with all their force, and they're putting all their vim and vigor into every stroke. And really, you shouldn't be putting much force at all into the cut. Just let the weight of the saw do its work, and you can easily correct a line so you can stay on track. And even though I've veered way over here, I can go back and clean up what I did. So the big ticket I want you to take away from this is keep an eye on what you're doing. Keep it in line, and the moment it starts to veer off, back up, fix your line, and then continue on your way. If you find that you are constantly, no matter what you're doing, constantly the saw is always veering off the one side, it's not going off the other, that means that the set on the teeth is wrong. So as the teeth are actually sticking up and hanging over, they're hanging over one way farther than the other. So the saw is naturally curving over, and you have to fix the set on the teeth. But if it's set up correctly, or if you find that you're veering off different directions at different times, that's because your body mechanic hasn't quite learned what you're doing in the saw. So when you start to see it going off track, stop, back up, clean up your line, and continue on down. So that's a little bit on guiding or driving a saw in the correct direction. It's something that you will learn over time. You're not going to make a perfect cut your first time, and it should slowly increase. And after a year or so of constantly using a handsaw, you'll find that it becomes very easy to guide a saw and put it right on the line. There is a lot that's in the body mechanics and how it's guiding. So if you find yourself veering all over the place, look at your elbow, look at where your arm is going, and keep your arm in line with the saw. It will fix a lot of things. But the one big key I can tell you is if you find yourself going offline, stop, back up, and correct the cut. Use the side of the teeth to move it over a little bit. Don't use a lot of pressure, just move it lightly and it will correct itself, and you can continue to have a nice straight cut. Now there's a lot of things that I can teach you in a movie, but I can't give you one-on-one guidance, and every single person out there is going to have a slightly different thing. Everyone's going to have a little bit different problem of how they hold it. And I really want to give a shout out to Shannon Rogers and the Hand Tool School. I bought several of his courses and I love what he's doing. This isn't paid in any way, I just want to give him a shout out and say, you know, if you ever want one-on-one training, he offers a thing called apprenticeship, where he will actually do a video one-on-one with you and see how you're holding the saw, how you're working things, and give you ideas on how to tweak and hold a saw better so that you can actually make a straight cut. And it's amazing what a few key things can change and really give you a great result very, very quickly. So definitely go take a look at the Hand Tool School. I'll leave a link in the description below. I love what he's doing there, and yeah, I know it's something you're gonna like. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to see if you have any questions. This may spur on another video in the future. If you have something that's like, hey, you didn't touch on that, please let me know. If you liked the video, please hit like and think about subscribing. Also want to say an incredible thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why this channel is here today. And if you want to find out more about that, you can click the link over here. If you like the video, feel free to check out one of my others. You might find something you like there. And until next time, have a wonderful day.